In a room filled with diamonds and lies, she realized the man she loved had sold her for both. The chandeliers at Ristorante Celeste hung like frozen rain, scattering fragments of light over crystal glasses and white linen. Elena Moretti sat at a corner table trying to steady her breath as waiters glided past with silver trays. She had spent all afternoon choosing the dress, a soft champagne silk that caught the light just enough to make her feel like she belonged among Milan's elite. Tonight was supposed to be the night Marco proposed. 1 year together, and he had promised something unforgettable. The restaurant hummed with quiet luxury, low laughter, the delicate sound of forks against porcelain. Elena checked her watch. Marco was late. Again. 15 minutes. 20. She smiled politely when the sommelier offered wine, declining because she didn't want to start celebrating without him. But inside, she felt that familiar ache, the one that came whenever she tried to convince herself everything was fine. Finally, the door opened. Marco De Luca entered with his usual confidence, all dark suit and bright smile. A man who believed the world existed for his charm. He kissed her cheek quickly, already distracted. "Sorry, amore. Business doesn't stop for romance." He sat, ordering a bottle of Barolo without asking her preference. She told herself not to be hurt, that he was just ambitious. That was what she'd always admired about him. As he began speaking about work, numbers, clients, mergers, her attention drifted. She caught a glimpse of her own reflection in the glass beside them, a woman trying to look happy while something inside her wilted. When Marco excused himself to take a quick call, she nodded, trying not to appear annoyed. She reached for her phone, pretending to scroll, until a fragment of his voice cut through the low murmur of conversation. Her name, Lena. She froze. "Her designs are worth more than she realizes," he was saying. "Yes, I can guarantee them as collateral. You'll have your payment by next quarter." The blood in her veins turned to ice. She leaned slightly, her view partially blocked by the wine rack, and saw him standing near the entrance, phone pressed to his ear, speaking too fast, too desperate. Her jewelry sketches, her dream project, were supposed to be confidential. He'd always said he'd help her find investors. Now she understood why. Her hand trembled as she reached for her water. The glass clinked against the plate. She barely noticed the footsteps approaching until a new voice cut through the air, calm but edged with steel. "If you're going to sell something that isn't yours, De Luca," the man said, "at least don't do it in my house." The entire restaurant fell silent. Conversations died mid-sentence. Waiters froze mid-step. Marco turned, his face draining of color. Standing behind him was a man Elena had only ever seen in whispers. Tall, dark suit perfectly fitted, presence impossible to ignore. Lorenzo Vitale. The name carried through Milan like a legend. Businessman, philanthropist, rumored criminal. He owned the restaurant and, some said, half the city. Marco stammered. "Signor Vitale, this is a misunderstanding." Lorenzo didn't move. His gaze remained level, the kind of gaze that measured worth and found most people lacking. "I dislike misunderstandings conducted in my establishments," he said. His accent was faint but heavy with authority, especially when they involve deceit. Elena felt her pulse racing, the weight of every eye turning toward their table. She wanted to disappear, but then Lorenzo's attention shifted. His eyes met hers across the distance, dark and steady. For a moment, everything else vanished. The noise, the light, even the shame. There was no pity in his expression, only recognition. Like he saw the truth she was trying to hide, the hurt, the disbelief, the quiet humiliation burning behind her composure. Marco tried to recover his charm. "It's all a simple mix-up. My girlfriend's designs are part of a joint venture. Nothing illegal." Lorenzo's gaze flicked back to him. "Joint ventures require consent." His voice dropped to a dangerous calm. "Does she look like she gave it?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Elena stood, her chair scraping against the marble. "Marco," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Tell me he's wrong." Marco opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Lorenzo's hand lifted slightly, a subtle command that sent the nearest waiter scurrying to restore order. Then he looked at her again, softer this time. "Miss Moretti, he said quietly. "You shouldn't have to witness this here. Come with my staff. They'll see you home." She didn't move. Humiliation burned through her like fever. Tears blurred the edges of the room. She wanted to scream, to hit Marco, to erase the last year, but she only managed a whisper. "Why?" Marco looked down, unable to meet her eyes. Lorenzo's voice cut through the silence once more, final and absolute. "Because men like him forget that women like you are not for sale." And in that single sentence, Elena's old world shattered, and a new, far more dangerous one began. The night after the betrayal refused to end for Elena Moretti. She lay awake staring at the ceiling of her small Milan apartment, her mind looping through every word, every look, every sound from Ristorante Celeste, the glittering room where her dreams had been broken. Her phone had not stopped buzzing, Marco's name flashing again and again. She let it ring until the silence itself began to feel like a wound. When dawn finally came, a soft knock startled her. She opened the door, expecting a neighbor. Instead, she found a man in a black suit holding a small velvet box. His eyes unreadable, he spoke with the calm precision of someone who was used to obedience. "Signorina, Moretti, a message from Mr. Vitale," he said, placing the box in her trembling hands before disappearing down the hallway. Inside the box lay a necklace, a cascade of fine diamonds far too exquisite for anyone like her to own. A folded note rested beneath it, written in dark ink, the words simple and final. "Don't look at him again. LV." Elena stared at the note, unsure whether to feel fear or confusion. The man she had met for less than a minute, the one whose voice could silence an entire restaurant, had found her home. How he knew her address she could not imagine. But what unsettled her most was not the intrusion. It was the strange sense of safety she felt reading those words. Later that day, she tried to return to her normal routine, sketching designs for the boutique that carried her jewelry, but nothing felt normal. Her hands refused to steady her thoughts, kept returning to Lorenzo Vitale, the way he had looked at her, not with pity, but with quiet understanding, like he had seen her kind of pain before. By evening, curiosity overcame her. She searched his name on her laptop. Article after article appeared photos of him at charity events and art auctions, always surrounded by power brokers, politicians, and celebrities, and yet every image carried the same thing: the shadows behind his eyes, the mystery of a man no one truly knew. Then her phone rang again, an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something compelled her to answer. "Signorina Moretti," the voice was smooth, low-accented. "Mr. Vitale requests your presence tomorrow at the Galleria Vitale. 10 o'clock. Do not be late." Before she could speak, the line went dead. Sleep was impossible that night. She dressed carefully the next morning, choosing the one black dress that made her look confident, even if she did not feel it. The gallery stood in the heart of Milan, its glass facade catching the morning sun inside. The space gleamed with sculptures and paintings, each piece lit with surgical precision. She stepped inside, heart pounding. Lorenzo Vitale was already there, standing before a massive painting of a storm at sea. He turned as if he had known the exact moment she would enter. "Good morning, Miss Moretti." His voice carried quiet command. "I hope my message yesterday reached you. You shouldn't have sent that," she said, holding the note in her hand, his gaze flicked toward it, unreadable. "Why?" "Because it scared you." She hesitated. "It confused me." He nodded slowly. "Confusion is safer than danger." He gestured toward the painting. "My father used to say, storms reveal what calm waters hide." "I find that true of people too." Elena folded her arms. "Why am I here, Signor Vitale? Because the man who betrayed you owes money to very bad people, and they will not stop at him. They will come for anything that carries his name, including your work, including you." Her breath caught. "You expect me to believe that? Believe whatever keeps you alive," he said quietly. His eyes softened for the first time. "I do not interfere in other people's lives, Miss Moretti, but last night you were humiliated under my roof. That makes you my responsibility. I don't want your protection," she said sharply. "I didn't ask for it." "No, but you will need it." He stepped closer, his presence filling the room like gravity. "And when you see him again," he added, voice dropping to something darker, something dangerous, "remember what I said. Don't look at him again." The words were not a warning. This time, they were a promise, and as she met his gaze, she realized that whatever line had separated her life from his world had already vanished. She was standing inside his storm, and part of her was no longer sure she wanted to leave it. The next morning, Milan felt different. The streets still glimmered with the same pale winter sun. But for Elena, Moretti, nothing looked the same. The city she had once loved now felt like a maze of eyes watching from every shadow. Her meeting with Lorenzo Vitale had left Haag. Ere shaken, his warning kept echoing inside her head. Don't look at him again. She tried to return to her shop, pretending she could still control her life. Yet every sound made her flinch. Every stranger's glance felt loaded with meaning as she arranged her jewelry pieces in the glass display. A black car pulled up outside its tinted windows, reflecting her own face before the door opened. A man stepped out, tall, silent, dressed in the same impeccable style as Vitale's men. He entered the shop without a word and handed her an ivory envelope. Signorina Moretti, Mr. Vitale requests your presence tonight at Teatro dell'Arte, the premiere of his company's charity gala, he said in a clipped voice, his expression giving nothing away. Attendance is not optional. Then he turned and left as quietly as he had come. Her heart pounded. She hadn't expected to see Lorenzo again so soon. The gala was a world far removed from hers, but something deeper than fear compelled her to go. That evening, she stood before her mirror in a dark emerald dress, one she had designed but never dared to wear. She told herself she was only going to thank him and to prove she wasn't afraid. The theater glowed with chandeliers and golden arches, a sea of elegance where every guest whispered power. Elena's arrival barely drew notice until she reached the marble staircase and saw him. Lorenzo Vitale in a tailored black suit, his presence effortless yet commanding. His eyes found her instantly as though he had been waiting. The air around him seemed to tighten when she approached. You came? He said, his voice low but carrying easily over the music. You said attendance was not optional, she replied. He smiled faintly. I hoped you would disobey. Before she could respond, a familiar laugh froze her in place. She turned and saw Marco standing near the bar glass in hand, whispering to another man she didn't know. The sight made her pulse race, not Frau. Me longing, but from the sting of betrayal that still burned, she felt Lorenzo move closer, his voice barely a whisper beside her ear. Don't look at him, Elena. She tried to turn away, but Marco had already seen her. His smile was rehearsed, but his eyes betrayed fear. He started toward them. Lorenzo's hand rested lightly on her arm, stopping her. Stay still, he murmured, his tone calm but edged with something that made her skin prickle. Marco reached them, pretending confidence. Good evening, Sophie, he said, using the nickname she'd once loved. His eyes flicked to Lorenzo, who regarded him with detached amusement. Ah, the thief himself, Lorenzo said softly. The music around them seemed to fade. People sensed the tension, pretending not to stare. Marco swallowed. I came to talk to Elena privately, he said. I believe she has nothing left to say to you, Lorenzo replied, his voice even but final. She's not your concern. Marco's jaw clenched. She's my fiancé. Lorenzo's gaze hardened. Do you see a ring on her finger? For a heartbeat, silence consumed the hall. Then Lorenzo stepped closer, his tone shifting from quiet civility to command. I warned you once, DeLuca, not to bring your shame into my house. Now you do it again in public. His hand tightened slightly on Elena's arm. Not possessive, but protective. Everyone nearby could feel the charge in the air. Marco's composure cracked. He looked at Elena, eyes pleading. Please tell me you don't believe him, she whispered. One word enough. Leave. Before Marco could respond, two of Lorenzo's men appeared beside him, expressionless, their presence alone enough to drain the color from Marco's face. Lorenzo turned to Elena, offering his arm. Shall we return to the gala? Miss Moretti. His tone polite, as if nothing had happened. As they walked away, Elena's thoughts raced. She should have felt anger at being treated like a fragile object, yet what she felt instead was an unsettling sense of safety inside his orbit. The world no longer seemed capable of hurting her, but that comfort frightened her more than any threat. Later that night, as the gala ended, and the last guests departed, Lorenzo led her to a terrace overlooking the glittering lights of Milan below. You handled yourself with grace, he said, his gaze searching hers. You think you can protect me from everything? She asked softly. He stepped closer, his voice a low promise. Not everything, but from men like him. Yes. The wind carried his words through the night, and Elena knew the storm she had stepped into was only beginning. The night after the gala, Elena could not sleep. Her mind spun between fear and confusion, between the sound of Lorenzo Vitale's calm voice and the cold look in Marco's eyes. She had seen danger before, but not like this, the kind that wears a suit, smiles politely, and decides fates with a single word outside her window. Milan glimmered as if nothing had changed. But everything had. By morning, a black car waited again outside her apartment, a different driver this time, silent and expressionless. He handed her a phone before she could ask questions. The screen lit up with a single incoming call. Lorenzo's voice flowed through the speaker, steady and deliberate. "Good morning, Miss Moretti. I trust you slept little," she hesitated. "How do you know that? Because I didn't either," he said quietly. "Meet me at the gallery in 1 hour." She almost refused. But curiosity, or something stronger, pulled her there. The gallery was empty, except for him standing near a sculpture of glass wings. Light shimmered across the marble floor as he turned to face her, his eyes unreadable. "I wanted to apologize for last night," he said calmly. "You were caught in something that should not have touched you." She folded her arms. It already did. Lorenzo studied her for a long moment, then said, "There are people searching for Marco, and by extension, you, the men he owes money to, are not patient or kind." She took a step back. "What do you mean?" "I mean you are in danger, and my name is now attached to yours because of Last night he moved closer, his presence radiating quiet command. "If you stay where you are, they will find you." Her throat tightened. "What are you suggesting?" "I am not suggesting anything," he said simply. "I am telling you, come to the villa outside the city. It is safe, and until this is resolved, you will stay there." "You can't just decide that for me," she said, anger rising. "I make it a habit not to argue with people I intend to protect," he replied evenly. She stared at him, disbelief warring with a strange pull in her chest. He sighed and looked away for a brief moment, his voice softened. "You think I am trying to control you? I am not. This is not about power. It is about survival." He handed her a folded newspaper, her picture from the gala on the front page, rumors swirling around the mysterious woman on Lorenzo Vitale's arm. Her blood went cold. "You see?" he said quietly. "The attention is already spreading. If they know your face, it is only a matter of time before they know your address. You will come with me tonight, pack what you need, by sunset." She found herself in the back seat of his car, watching the city fade into countryside. The tension between them sat heavy in the air. After an hour, the car turned through wrought iron gates, winding up a long drive lined with cypress trees, until the villa appeared a place out of time, white stone walls glowing under golden light. It looked peaceful, but Elena sensed the invisible security surrounding it. Lorenzo led her through halls filled with art and silence. "You will stay here in the East Wing," he said. "Your meals will be brought to you. The staff are loyal. Do not leave the grounds without me." She turned to face him. "Why are you doing this for someone you barely know?" He hesitated, then said quietly, "Because I remember what it feels like to trust the wrong person." His eyes darkened, and for a heartbeat she saw pain beneath the armor of control. That night, alone in the vast room, she could not shake the feeling that she had crossed an invisible line somewhere between fear and fascination. She stepped onto the balcony where the lake shimmered under the moonlight far below. She could see guards patrolling their silhouettes, moving like shadows protecting her or imprisoning her, she could no longer tell. And as she stood there, a knock came at the door. Soft, deliberate, she opened it, expecting a maid. Instead, she found Lorenzo holding a glass of wine, his expression unreadable. "I wanted to be sure you were comfortable," he said quietly, and then added with a tone that sent a chill down her spine. "The men who hurt you once will try again, but this time they will have to go through me first." In that moment she realized this was not protection, it was possession dressed as mercy, and though she should have felt afraid, part of her felt something far more dangerous. She felt safe. The following days at the villa felt unreal. Time moved differently behind those iron gates. Mornings were quiet, filled with the distant hum of the lake breeze and the soft footsteps of guards who never spoke. Elena tried to convince herself she was safe, but safety felt like a lie wrapped in silk. She could not step outside without permission, could not make a phone call without a shadow watching. She had traded one kind of betrayal for another. Each evening Lorenzo appeared at dinner, always calm, always controlled. They ate in the grand dining hall where candlelight danced on crystal glasses, and the silence between them was louder than words. She tried to keep her distance, but every time he looked at her she felt the pull of something she couldn't name. On the third night, he found her in the garden sketching jewelry designs on a small pad she had brought from home. "You still create," he said softly, his voice behind her. She turned, startled. "I try to remember who I was before all this, before him, before you." His gaze lingered on her face and then on the sketches. These are beautiful. You draw from emoting. Not from form, she shrugged. Art is the only thing that doesn't lie. He studied her for a moment, then said quietly, That is why it's dangerous. Truth always costs something. She looked up at him, his expression unreadable. Do you ever tell the truth? She asked. His lips curved slightly. I tell it when it serves its purpose, and what purpose does it serve tonight? She whispered. To remind you that you are not my prisoner. She laughed bitterly. Aren't I? He took a slow step closer. No, you're under my protection. That's different. Protection feels like a cage, she said softly. Then why haven't you tried to escape? He asked. The question hung between them like smoke. She didn't answer because she couldn't. She didn't want to admit that part of her didn't want to leave. A sudden noise cut through the night, the echo of raised voices coming from the lower courtyard. Lorenzo's calm vanished in an instant. His eyes sharpened. Stay here, he ordered, already moving toward the sound. But Elena followed, ignoring the fear tightening her chest through the window. She saw headlights cutting through the darkness, 2 black cars screeching to a halt at the gates. Armed men shouting in Italian. The guards reacted quickly, rifles raised, but Lorenzo stepped forward, his presence alone enough to command silence. She watched as he spoke with the intruders, his tone even but lethal. After a tense moment, they retreated back into their cars, engines roaring as they disappeared into the night. He stood still for a long time after they were gone, then turned slowly toward the villa, his eyes finding her watching from above. When he entered, minutes later his composure had returned, but his hands were still clenched. They were not common thieves, he said quietly. Someone sent them for you. Her breath caught. Who would do that, Marco? He nodded once. Or someone who thinks he can reach me through you. She took a step back. I never asked for this, Lorenzo. I never wanted to be part of your world. His voice dropped lower. You became part of it the moment he sold your name. He moved closer until she could feel his breath. I warned you not to look at him again. Now his mistakes are mine to clean up. His anger was not loud. It was quiet and precise, the kind that came from a man used to control and violence. She wanted to hate him for dragging her deeper into his shadows, but something in his eyes stopped her. It wasn't rage, it was fear. Fear for her. That night Elena couldn't sleep. She paced the room, the sound of rain tapping against the glass when she finally sat by the window. She saw him outside, soaked under the storm, standing guard himself instead of sending his men. She watched until he disappeared into the darkness, her heart racing for reasons she could no longer explain. For the first time she realized that Lorenzo Vitale wasn't just dangerous because of his power. He was dangerous because she had begun to care about him, and that terrified her more than any gun or enemy ever could. The next morning the storm had passed, but the air around the villa still felt charged with danger. The guards moved differently, quicker, sharper, as if waiting for something to strike. Elena stood by the window watching them. She hadn't seen Lorenzo since the night before, but she could still hear his voice echoing in her head. Someone sent them for you. Her thoughts were interrupted when the housekeeper entered carrying breakfast on a silver tray. Good morning, signorina, the lady said politely. Mr. Vitale asks that you remain indoors today. There are matters being handled. Elena forced a smile, but unease settled heavy in her chest. Matters being handled meant something was wrong. Hours passed before she finally heard footsteps approaching the study door, opened, and Lorenzo entered still in the same dark suit from the night before. His eyes were tired, but his expression was unreadable. They were mercenaries, he said without preamble. Paid by someone from the city. Her voice trembled. Paid by Marco. His silence was answer enough. She sank into the nearest chair. I can't keep running from this. Lorenzo. He watched her carefully. You won't have to. I'll deal with him. His tone was calm. Too calm. What does that mean? She asked. Deal with him. How his gaze held hers for a long time until she realized he wasn't talking about forgiveness. Don't do this, she whispered. I don't want blood on my hands. He walked closer until he was standing beside her, his shadow falling across her face. There are things you don't understand in my world. Mercy is weakness. Forgiveness invites death. She stood to face him. Then, teach me your world. If I'm already living inside it? His eyes narrowed, surprised by her courage. You wouldn't survive it, he said. I've survived betrayal, humiliation, and fear. She replied quietly. I'll survive truth. For the first time, a flicker of emotion cracked through his control. He looked away and poured himself a drink. "You think truth will protect you?" he said softly. "It won't. It destroys everything. It touches." He took a sip and added almost to himself, "It already destroyed me." She stepped closer. "Who destroyed you?" He looked at her. Then the mask slipped for a moment long enough for her to see pain that went deeper than power. "My father," he said. "He taught me that loyalty is bought with blood. He taught me to rule with fear, and when I tried to change that, when I tried to build something cleaner, they killed him, and I became what I swore I never would." Elena's heart tightened. The man she had feared suddenly seemed human, broken, even. She whispered, "Then stop, before it takes what's left of you." His eyes darkened. "I can't, not anymore. This isn't about choice. This is survival." Before she could respond, the door burst open. One of his men entered, breathless. "Boss, we found him. Marco was seen near the docks. He's trying to leave the country." Lorenzo's entire body went still. "Prepare the car," he ordered. The man nodded and disappeared. She grabbed his arm. Please don't go." He turned his head slightly, his eyes softer than his voice. "I have to end this, then take me with you," she said. He stared at her as if weighing the risk before answering fine, but stay close and do not interfere. The drive through Milan was silent, the city lights flickering across her face as they reached the docks. Heavy fog rolled off the water. Lorenzo's men fanned out weapons hidden beneath their coats. Elena's pulse hammered as they found Marco cornered near a warehouse. His eyes widened when he saw her. "Lorenzo, what are you doing?" he shouted. "You can't scare me forever." Lorenzo's voice was calm. "You sold her name. You used her designs to buy your escape. You made her a target, and now you will answer for it." Marco's desperation turned to panic. "I did what I had to. The people I owe. They will kill me if I don't pay." He lunged forward, grabbing Elena's wrist. "You don't understand," he hissed. "They'll come for you too." Before Lorenzo could react, one of the men aimed his gun. The shot rang out loud, and final Marco collapsed, the fog swallowing his last breath. Elena stood frozen as the sound echoed through the docks. Lorenzo turned slowly toward her, his expression unreadable. "You said you'd deal with him," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I did," he answered quietly. "This was mercy." She looked into his eyes and realized there was no going back. She had seen what mercy meant in his world, and for the first time she wasn't sure if the danger around him frightened her more than the darkness inside him. As they drove back through the sleeping city, Lorenzo's hand rested over hers, his voice low, almost regretful. "Now you know who I am, Elena. This is what I was trying to protect you from." She stared out the window, the lights of Milan fading into darkness. Then maybe she said softly, "You were protecting me from becoming just like you." But as she felt his fingers tighten around hers, she wasn't sure that was true anymore. The night after Marco's death, the villa was silent, but not peaceful. Elena could still hear the echo of the gunshot that had ended one life and changed hers forever. She sat by the window, staring at the dark water of the lake, wondering when she had stopped feeling fear and started feeling something far more dangerous. Understanding Lorenzo had disappeared into his office after they returned. She had heard doors slam, voices whispering, then nothing at all. The entire estate seemed to hold its breath when the door finally opened. It was past midnight. He looked the same, perfectly controlled, yet his eyes betrayed the storm inside him. "You shouldn't have been there," he said, his tone low but hard. "You told me not to interfere," she replied softly. "I didn't." He stopped mid-sentence, then exhaled slowly. "I should have kept you away from all of it." She rose from her chair, anger and exhaustion blending together. "You think distance will make me safe? I've already seen everything. I can't unsee it." His jaw tightened. "You saw one man die. There are hundreds more who would do the same if it meant survival. This world doesn't forgive weakness." "Then why do you keep pretending you're the only one who has to carry it?" she asked. He looked at her for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether to shut her out or let her in. Finally, he said, "Because the moment I stop carrying it, it falls on you." He walked toward the fireplace, the flames throwing shadows across his face. For the first time he looked older, not in years, but in weight. "There's something you don't know about Marco," he continued. "He wasn't working alone." She froze. "What do you mean someone paid him to steal your designs to draw attention to me? This was never about the money. It was about me." Every word tightened the fear in her chest. Who would want that? Lorenzo's gaze met hers. Someone close to me. Someone inside this house. She stepped back, the realization set. Ling cold in her stomach. Someone here betrayed you. He nodded, his expression unreadable, and now that person knows you were with me at the docks, which means they know how to hurt me. Before she could respond, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the villa into darkness. The only sound was the wind against the windows and the faint click of distant footsteps. Elena's pulse spiked. "What's happening?" she whispered. "Stay behind me," Lorenzo said. Already reaching into his jacket, he moved with the precision of a man who had lived too long with danger. A moment later, 2 guards burst through the door, breathless. Someone cut the main power line. "They're inside." Gunfire erupted from the courtyard, muffled shouts echoing through the halls. Lorenzo grabbed Elena's wrist and pulled her toward the back corridor. "Stay low," he ordered, his voice steady, despite the chaos. They moved through the dim light toward a hidden door behind a tapestry. It opened into a narrow passage leading to the wine cellar. When they reached the bottom, Lorenzo turned and pressed her against the wall, his breath harsh, but his eyes still sharp. "Listen to me. If we get separated, find Enzo. Tell him to take you to the safe house." She shook her head. "No, I'm not leaving you." He leaned closer, his voice softer now. "You have to." He hesitated, then added something that sent her heart racing. "If they take me alive, they'll use you against me, and I won't let that happen." The footsteps grew louder above them, heavy, deliberate, the sound of men hunting through the villa. Lorenzo drew his weapon and positioned himself near the stairs. "Stay behind these crates," he whispered. "If anything happens, you run." Minutes stretched like hours, the air thick with smoke and fear. Then the door burst open. Figures flooded in, the flashes of gunfire lighting the cellar in violent bursts. Lorenzo moved like shadow and fire, controlled, deadly precise. Elena could do nothing. Watch and pray until the noise stopped and silence returned. Lorenzo stood, breathing hard, one shoulder bleeding but alive. One of the intruders lay motionless on the floor. Elena stepped forward before she could speak. The dying man laughed, low and broken. "You'll never find him," he whispered. "Vitale. He's closer than you think." Lorenzo's eyes darkened. "Who sent you?" But the man's last breath left before he could answer. Lorenzo turned to Elena, his face pale with fury, and something else, guilt. He dropped the gun and whispered, "Someone inside betrayed us. Someone who knows everything about me, and now about you." She felt the weight of his words like a blade between her ribs. She wanted to believe they were still safe inside his world, but the truth was clear. The danger wasn't outside the villa anymore. It was already within its walls, and whoever it was, they were waiting for their moment to strike. The next morning, the villa no longer felt like a sanctuary. It felt like a stage where danger moved in silence. The guards patrolled more often, their faces tense. The staff avoided eye contact, and every sound made Elena's heart race. She had spent the night in Lorenzo's study waiting for answers that never came. The smell of smoke and gunpowder still clung to the air, reminders of how close death had come. When Lorenzo finally entered the room, the daylight was pale and cold. He looked exhausted, his sleeve bandaged but his expression steady. "We found the body of one intruder near the lake," he said. "The others escaped." She stood from the couch, her voice sharp. "Escaped? How, with this many guards?" He hesitated before answering, "Because they had help from inside." She stared at him, realizing what that meant. "Someone here? Someone you trust?" "Yes," he said quietly. "And that makes it harder." "Who do you suspect?" she asked. He didn't answer right away, walking to the window. Instead, the reflection of the lake danced across his face. "One of them was seen near the estate 2 days ago," he said. Inly Enzo, her breath caught. "Your driver, impossible. He saved my life more than once." Lorenzo's voice darkened. "Betrayal usually comes from those who have that privilege?" She shook her head, refusing to believe it. "Maybe someone framed him. You can't just decide." He turned sharply, his patience fraying. "Elena, I don't decide anything without proof, but I don't ignore signs either." His words cut through the room like a blade. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I can protect you from my enemies, not from those who pretend to be my allies." Later that afternoon, Lorenzo left to question the staff, leaving 2 guards stationed outside her room. But even their presence failed to calm her. She walked to the window and looked down at the courtyard, where men moved like shadows. Something deep inside told her the threat was still here. Watching, waiting. Hours passed and dusk fell when a quiet knock came at her door. She hesitated. "Who is it?" "It's me." "Enzo." The voice was low, steady, the same voice that had once felt safe. She opened the door halfway, his eyes darted around the hallway before settling on her signorina. "Please, we must leave now. They're coming for you." "What are you talking about?" she whispered. "You're not safe here," he said quickly. "Mr. Vitale suspects the wrong people, and the ones truly behind this know it. They won't stop until you're gone." Her pulse quickened. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I owe your father a debt," he said softly. "Your father?" she repeated, confused. "I don't understand." He looked away. "No time to explain. Trust me." Before she could answer, footsteps echoed from the hall. Lorenzo's voice thundered from behind the corner. "Enzo, step away from her." Now Enzo froze, the guards appeared, weapons drawn. Lorenzo's face was carved from stone, his gun aimed directly at the man who had once been his right hand. Enzo slowly raised his hands. "I didn't betray you, boss. I swear I was trying to protect her, P. Protect her by sneaking her out." Lorenzo's tone was deadly cold. "You have a mole inside the organization," Enzo said quickly. "The men last night weren't mine. They were working for someone higher, someone she knows." Elena's stomach twisted. "Who are you talking about?" Enzo's eyes flicked to her, then to Lorenzo. "Your assistant Francesca, the one who brought her to the gala. She's been feeding your enemies information since the beginning." Lorenzo's jaw tightened, his eyes dark with realization. "She was with Bianca's people," he muttered. Enzo nodded. "They wanted Elena, not for ransom, but leverage to control you." Before anyone could speak, another sound shattered the tension, a sharp crack of gunfire, glass exploding from the corridor. Francesca appeared at the end of the hall, gun in hand, her calm smile chilling. "Run," Enzo shouted, pushing Elena aside. The next second's blurred bullets ricocheted off marble. The guards returned fire. Lorenzo pulled Elena down behind a pillar, his body shielding hers as chaos erupted. When the noise finally stopped, Francesca lay on the floor, her eyes wide, lifeless. Enzo was on one knee, bleeding but still breathing. Lorenzo barked orders to his men, "Take him to the infirmary now." As they lifted Enzo away, Elena turned to Lorenzo, trembling. "She was inside your world. From the start." He nodded grimly. "Bianca wanted to make me watch someone innocent pay for my sins. She did not realize I no longer value my own life. But yours." He paused, his voice breaking. "For the first time, they almost took what keeps me human." She wanted to speak, but emotion caught in her throat. His hand brushed her cheek, his eyes filled with something raw and unguarded. "I will end this," he said quietly. "Not for revenge, but for you. No one touches what's mine again." That night, as the villa burned with new tension, Elena stood by the window watching Lorenzo in the courtyard speaking to his men, his power radiating even through the distance, and for the first time she understood he wasn't fighting for control anymore. He was fighting for love, a dangerous love that might save them both or destroy everything around them. The next day, the air inside the villa felt heavy with secrets. The scent of smoke from last night's gunfire still lingered in the halls. Guards spoke in whispers, afraid to look. Lorenzo Vitale in the eye, Elena moved through the corridors like someone walking through a dream. She could still see Francesca's lifeless face and Enzo's blood on the marble floor. Everything she thought she knew about Lorenzo's world was unraveling piece by piece. Lorenzo had locked himself in his office since dawn. No one dared interrupt him. Elena stood outside the door, hearing muffled voices. Then silence. She knocked once. No answer. She turned to leave when the door opened and his voice stopped her. "Come in." The room was dim, the curtains drawn, papers spread across the desk. Lorenzo looked tired but alert. There was no warmth in his eyes, only focus. "I know who's behind this," he said, his tone cold and deliberate. Elena stepped closer. "Who?" Lorenzo lifted a photograph from the table. A man in his 50s, sharp suit, cruel smile. "His name is Riccardo Bianchi, head of the Sicilian syndicate. Once my father's ally, now my enemy. He's been waiting years to break me, and he found his way in through you." Her breath caught through me. "Yes," Lorenzo said quietly. "He wanted to use you to destroy my control, to remind me what it costs to care." His voice softened, but his expression didn't change. "I made that mistake once before, and I swore I never would again." She took a step closer. "You mean your father's death, don't you?" Lorenzo nodded slowly. "Bianchi orchestrated it." My father tried to walk away from the business, start clean. They made sure he couldn't, and now he's using the same weakness against me. He moved around the desk, his gaze fixed on her. I won't let him take you too. You can't face him alone, she said. Firmly, he gave a small, bitter smile. I don't have the luxury of anyone else. Everyone close to me becomes a target. I'm already a target, she said, her voice shaking but strong. I'm still. Here, let me help. He stared at her, the firelight flickering across his face. You think you know what helping me means? Elena, it means blood. It means loss. She met his eyes. Then teach me to survive it. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the distant thunder rolling across the lake. Then Lorenzo finally said, We leave tonight. By sunset, they were in the city again, hidden inside a sleek black car, the streets of Milan alive with neon and rain. The plan was simple. Find Bianchi's broker extract proof and destroy his hold before he struck again. But nothing in Lorenzo's world was ever simple. They stopped near the old opera house, one of Bianchi's known meeting places. His men spread out, blending into the crowd. Elena stayed close to Lorenzo, her heart racing with every step. Inside the opera, the music echoed faintly from rehearsals, above empty balconies draped in dust. Lorenzo moved with precision, his eyes scanning every corner. Suddenly, a shadow emerged from behind the curtain, the click of a safety switch breaking the silence. Don't move, a voice warned Lorenzo. Froze slowly, raising his hands. Riccardo Bianchi stepped forward, smiling as if welcoming an old friend. Lorenzo Vitale, he said in a smooth voice, still cleaning up your father's mess. I see. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. Let her go. Bianchi looked at Elena, then laughed. Oh, she's the reason you're still bleeding. I must thank her. She's done more damage than my men ever could. Elena's pulse pounded as one of Bianchi's guards grabbed her arm. Lorenzo's eyes flicked toward her, calm but burning with fury. You came all this way for me? Bianchi continued. But it's too late. The proof is gone. The deal is done. Your empire is finished. Lorenzo's voice dropped low and dangerous. You made one mistake. Bianchi frowned. What mistake? Thinking you could touch her. Everything happened in seconds. Lorenzo lunged forward, disarming the nearest guard and fire exploded through the opera hall. Elena ducked behind a row of velvet seats, the sound deafening when it stopped, the room filled with smoke and silence. Lorenzo stood over Bianchi, weapon aimed steady, chest rising fast but controlled. This ends here, Lorenzo said. Bianchi smiled. Even bleeding. You think you've won? She's already paid the price. Lorenzo's eyes narrowed. What did you do? Bianchi coughed. Blood. His voice barely a whisper. Check. Her phone. Elena's hands trembled as she looked down, a message flashing across the screen. Unknown sender. The villa had been breached again while they were gone. Lorenzo's expression shifted from rage to horror. He turned to his men. Get the car now. The opera filled with sirens and echoing footsteps as they fled into the rain, but Elena could already feel it, something inside her breaking the last illusion of safety. Shattered that night as they sped back toward the villa, lights flashing in the distance, Lorenzo's voice was low but trembling. If they touched anyone there, they will learn what fear really means. Elena looked out into the storm, realizing this was no longer about survival, it was about revenge, and the man beside her was ready to burn the world to save her. The drive back to the villa felt endless. The rain struck the windshield like shards of glass. Lorenzo's hands were tight on the wheel, his jaw clenched, his eyes fixed ahead. Elena sat beside him, her chest tight with dread. She kept refreshing her phone, the last message still glowing on the screen. The villa has been breached. Her stomach twisted with every mile that passed, the silence between them heavier than the storm outside. When they arrived, the gates stood open. The guards gone. The once bright courtyard was littered with shattered glass and burning lights. Lorenzo stepped out before the car had even stopped. His men followed, weapons raised. Elena climbed out after him, her shoes sinking, to the wet gravel. She wanted to call out, but her voice caught in her throat. Inside the villa, the scent of smoke and blood filled the air, overturned furniture, broken lamps, the echo of chaos. Lorenzo moved through the darkness, his steps soundless until he stopped at the center of the main hall where one of his men lay wounded, barely conscious. Who did this? Lorenzo demanded. The man's voice was weak. Bianchi's second. Luca, they were looking for her. Then he went still. Elena's heart pounded. Lorenzo turned to her, his expression unreadable. "You stay behind me," he said, and for once she didn't argue. They moved deeper into the house. Every corner felt alive with danger until they reached the study. Door cracked open, light flickering inside. Lorenzo pushed it wider, revealing Luca standing by the desk, gun in hand, the fire behind him casting long shadows. "So it's true," Luca said, smiling faintly. "The mighty Lorenzo Vitale brought down by a woman. I warned you once that feelings get men killed." Lorenzo's voice was low, steady. "I gave you everything, Luca, and you sold me out for what money?" Luca shrugged. "Not money, freedom. I was tired of living under your shadow and Bianchi offered me a way out." Lorenzo took one step forward. "You killed my people for your freedom." Luca raised the gun. "Not yet." In that split second, Lorenzo moved faster than Elena thought possible. The sound of the shot echoed through the hall. Luca staggered but didn't fall. His gun fired once more, the bullet grazing Lorenzo's shoulder before Lorenzo's second shot ended it. Luca dropped his weapon, collapsing to the floor. The room went silent except for Elena's sharp breath. Lorenzo turned to her, blood darkening his sleeve. He tried to speak, but his knees buckled. She rushed to him, catching his weight as they sank to the floor. He gripped her wrist, his voice rough. "I told you to stay away from my world." She shook her head, tears blurring her vision. "And yet here I am," she whispered. His men burst in moments later, surrounding T. Him the danger was gone, but so was the calm. Everything they had built had burned to the ground. Hours later, the villa was quiet again. Dawn creeping through the shattered windows, Elena sat beside Lorenzo in his office, his shoulder bandaged, his eyes closed, but his breathing steady. She looked at him for a long time, her heart aching not from fear, but from understanding. He had destroyed everything to keep her alive. When he finally opened his eyes, the fire in them had changed. It was no longer rage, it was something softer, something human. "You should leave," he said. "You don't belong in this darkness." She smiled faintly. "Maybe not. But I found the only light that still exists here." He looked away as if afraid to believe her. "The city will always remember you as Vitale's woman," he said softly, "the one he couldn't let go." "Then let them remember me that way," she whispered. "The woman who made him human." He reached for her hand, his touch trembling. "Elena, if you stay, they'll come again. They always do." She leaned closer, her voice steady. "Then we fight again." Outside, the first rays of morning broke through the smoke rising over the lake. The world had changed. The empire he built was fractured but not broken, and somewhere in the ruins of power and fear, love had survived. Lorenzo stood at the window, his arm around her, his voice quiet but certain. "They'll come for me again. You know that." She nodded. "I know." Then he whispered words that carried the weight of everything they'd endured. "Don't look at them. Don't look back. And don't look at him again." She met his eyes and said softly, "I won't. I only look at you." The sun rose behind them, golden light spilling through the glass, illuminating the two of them, standing side by side, not as captor and captive, not as sinner and savior, but as two souls bound by love born from danger. In that light, Lorenzo Vitale finally let go of the darkness that had ruled him and Elena more. The woman he once vowed to protect, became the one who saved him. And in the quiet, after the storm, they both understood that even in a world built on power and fear, the most dangerous thing of all had always been love.